2019 GMC Acadia with a complaint of check engine light, vehicle shaking, and steering assist message. Let's go ahead and start her up. We do indeed have a steering assist message, so let's go ahead and check codes. And immediately this does not feel right to my fingers. There's no locator tab, so this is not our factory DLC. We've got some sort of device tapped in here, so this may or may not be related. So first I will try to connect here and see if I'm able to communicate. This is kind of what I thought we were going to find for codes. This seems to be fairly common on these Acadias, the 3.6 liter engine. ECM P0128, engine coolant thermostat, regulating temperature. Usually what we find is that the thermostat's stuck open and the engine is running too cold. It is, I believe, an electronic thermostat. No, maybe not. But I do see them fail fairly often. I do see the P0128, and it does happen to cause the steering assist reduced message. Let me see if I can bring up that bulletin that explains that. Okay, here's that bulletin, and it essentially says you need to take care of the P0128 first. So the reason that the steering message appears along with this is because the logic goes that if the engine were to overheat, it is next to the steering gear, which is an electronic steering gear, and the grease inside the steering gear, the viscosity of the grease could change outside of a calibrated value. And of course, GM does not want to get sued for a steering failure while you're driving, so they just default to showing you the service steering message to scare you into the shop and have it diagnosed and repaired. Not necessarily a bad thing to have it repaired, but I don't know how I feel about this one. Okay, so the coolant's full at least. That's a good start. Let me start it up and let's view some data and decide if that thermostat is working or not. The temperature gauge reading all the way on the bottom is also a normal effect of the P0128 code being set. P0128 will also cause the fan to run on high at all times. I just got back from the road test. The upper radiator hose is hot, so that means that the thermostat is indeed stuck open because we're only at about 170 degrees right now. The air blowing off that radiator is warm, so that means that the water is indeed flowing through the radiator when it's not supposed to be. The thermostat's not supposed to even open till about 185, 190. Okay, so I already told you, I already showed you, and I already decided that the thermostat is faulty. It's running too cold, it's stuck open, it's flowing coolant when it shouldn't be. But here's some diagnostic data to support that. Wherever this cursor sits is what the data will display. So as you can see, we have engine coolant temperature sensor and we have vehicle speed. So I began my road test. You can see that the engine coolant temperature is steadily rising and then peaks at about 176 and then just kind of never goes above 170, even when I stopped. This is when I tried to raise up the engine temperature, but because the code is set, the fan is running at all times, so I was not able to raise the engine temperature more than about 170 degrees. And then once you see me pick up speed here again, the temperature drops because that thermostat's flowing coolant through the radiator when it shouldn't. And then back here is when I was stopped for a while, and because that fan is running, we are just stuck here at about 171. So we do have a faulty thermostat. That's basically two ways to confirm that. And the shaking on acceleration, when I was driving it, it felt like a torque converter shudder to me because it was just kind of like a rumble strip feeling. It was like when I was accelerating. And I also happened to notice that it did it in more than one gear, so I don't think that the transmission itself is slipping in one gear or the other. I think that it is a torque converter shutter in every gear. And this is a front wheel drive based 6-speed transmission. Not too surprising that the fluid is dark. It smells pretty burnt too, so if we've got a torque converter shutter concern and otherwise the transmission is shifting okay, we should probably try to service that nasty fluid before we go any further with the torque converter. So I sprayed a little bit of lube on these two bleed pipes. I'm going to use a 90-degree pick to disconnect this harness. I'm going to get these out of the way, and then there's 2 bolts to get that housing, and then pull it right out. Not going to force this because you could bend that little pipe. I'm going to wiggle it, twist it, let the lubricant work its magic on the seal. There we go, nice geyser of coolant. Wiggle it. Pry up while I twist. Comes right out. Oh yeah, look at that. We're almost there. Just those 2 bolts left. Get around that little piece of foam. I like to get the bolts out of the way. Take them out. Get them out of the way. One fell down right there. Okay, so now, lucky, I was able to pull that right off of there. So now I might have to give this a little bit of a twisting motion and then wiggle, twist, and pull. It's a little bit stuck. Could use a little bit of spray. Gonna take a little bit of fighting to get off of there. I can just barely get my hands on there just enough to apply some force. Wiggle it. Oh. Almost got it. Almost. It wants to come off here. Let me get something else. How about this pick? Could I do a twisting motion and pulling motion at the same time? Maybe. Not very reliably. Feels like I'm gonna hurt myself or break something. Oh, it's so close, it wants to come off. It wants to come off of there. It's like it's stuck to the engine block with the seal really bad. Stuck with dust and dirt. How about this? Can I really carefully just apply a little bit of force there? Probably not. No. How about off of that plastic cover? Full risk. Actually, that does seem to work. Can't say I recommend it though. It's wanting to. It's just stuck. It's really badly stuck. I don't really want to force it any more than that. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. Damn, that thing is stuck. It's stuck to the block. There we go. Now that I got the thermostat pulled loose from the pipe here, there's one 10mm bolt to remove on this end so that you'll have enough room on the other end to manipulate and get the thermostat out. Just give me a second. Okay, so look, you can pull the pipe back now, and that'll give you enough room to pull that housing up and out. Okay. And then we're gonna have to take off that bracket. Take off this front motor mount bracket to slide the thermostat out that little hole. Got the engine supported with a jack below. Looks like we've got 2 big bolts over here and 2 small ones there. Good and tight. It might take some wiggling, but we'll get it out of there. Pull that pipe out of the way. Yeah, gonna take some wiggling. I know I can get it out because I've done it before. I know it'll come out. Just gotta find the magic spot. Magic spot, where are you? Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's not coming out of here. Well, if I loosen up this engine cover thing, will that make any difference? Of course, there's a million more bolts holding it. Okay, so that was the secret all along, was to remove the intake manifold. So I'll have to clean that up and replace the intake gaskets also, but look at that. It'll come out. Okay, so now it's a matter of cleaning out the fluid from the bolt holes, cleaning out that electrical connector, replace that seal, clean up surfaces, and go back together. I don't think I'm going to bother showing you go back together because it's pretty straightforward, and I'm actually working after hours to get this job done, and I'd rather just go home. So. Okay, and before I really go back together all the way, got the intake cleaned up, gonna put some new gaskets there. I've got my new seal here on the pipe, lubed it up with some dielectric grease. Got the bolt holes blown out so there's no fluid. Got the electrical connector blown out. And then I put new seals here and lubricated it with some dielectric. So that's really all I have for tips going back together. Some of the motor mount bolts here also need to be replaced. They're one-time use. Yep. Got it. Right in there. Put the bolts back in and essentially reverse your removal. Okay, got everything reassembled. I've got the vacuum pulled on the cooling system. It's holding. We're good. We're gonna refill the coolant. The customer's literally here to pick it up right now, so I think I'm gonna call this one fixed. Visual inspection, nothing apparent. This is what I've typically been seeing. I've seen these thermostats fail with nothing visually wrong with them. They must get weak springs or something. But let's take a look at some data to just confirm that we are fixed. Okay, so here's another road test after the repair. Looks like we peaked at about 205 there and then stabilized at about 192. This must have been a short drive, but as you can see, we reached full operating temperature and then we stabilized. Before, we couldn't even reach past about 175, so about there was where we were before, not even able to warm up past that point. So this is indeed fixed. That's all I got.